Am I growing out of the superhero genre? It's a question I've been asking myself over the past couple of months, and this video has been in the works for just as long. I keep coming back to it, but I never seem to be able to work out what the real reason is. Am I just getting to the point in my life where I don't feel the same about these movies anymore? Sure, there's been some great moments over the last 2 or 3 years, but to say I had the same feeling I did 10 years ago would be a lie. It's a feeling that has caused me to question my own investments in the superhero genre. Why don't I feel the same connection to these films anymore, and why am I not enjoying them as much as the older films? Maybe it's because I am growing out of the genre. I know I am not the same person I was 10 years ago, but when recent trailers have come out, I've genuinely been excited for most of the recent releases. So clearly I still have that investment in them. Or have I been excited for the idea of them? Could the memory I had growing up of loving these films be influencing me today? And could the desire of wanting that feeling back be the catalyst for my excitement of the new superhero movies? Do I just not enjoy superhero films anymore, and the only reason I am excited for the recent superhero films is chasing that old feeling? Possibly, but if that was the case, then I wouldn't still enjoy older superhero films and even some more recent releases. I can happily sit down and watch most of the superhero films made before 2019 and a couple made after then. Now, nostalgia is a powerful tool, but I don't think it's nostalgia that has me asking these questions. I don't think nostalgia is causing me to enjoy the older movies more than the recent ones, because the Batman and Spider-Man No Way Home are some of my favorites of the genre, and they released in the last 3 years. So if it's not nostalgia, there must be another reason. Maybe it's the characters used. Fan favorites of both Marvel and DC haven't been seen for a while, and the more recent films have been with smaller characters, and that could be the reason for the lack of superhero film enjoyment I've had, but I didn't really know of Iron Man or Captain America until the MCU came around, so at one point in time, they were small characters to me. But I loved their films, so why can't the same happen with recent releases about smaller characters? There is no denying that there is a high saturation in superhero films. In 2023 alone, 7 superhero films came out, 4 from DC and 3 from Marvel. For me, that definitely will have an impact on it. I remember having to wait 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 years in between these films. Now you get one every 3 or 4 months. So is the increase of movies released causing my lack of enjoyment for recent releases? Partially, but I don't think that is the primary cause, because if they're great films, then the more the merrier, right? I wouldn't be upset at seeing more movies that I love, so I don't think that is the exact reason why I'm falling out of love with these recent superhero flicks. So we've already established that it's not me growing out of the genre, as I still love the older superhero films, and that's not nostalgia because I still have enjoyed recent releases like the Batman and Spider-Man No Way Home. It's not the characters used, and the primary cause isn't the increase of superhero films released, although that is a contributing factor. So what could the main reason be? Well, I've done a lot of thinking and a lot of self-reflecting, and I've come to the realization that the more recent films just aren't made the same way anymore, and the mindset surrounding superheroes is changing. And when I say they aren't made the same way anymore, what I mean by that is these films are not seen as films anymore. They're just studio products. Most of the films recently don't feel like filmmaker movies. They feel like studio movies with directors and writers as puppets. And I think that is a big issue I have with these films. You don't feel the director's visions anymore. They're no longer made with directors in mind. They're greenlit by the studio and they're changed by the studio. And in the end, your director is just a puppet for the studio's movie. The Dark Knight trilogy, you feel the director. The Raimi trilogy, you feel the director. The Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, you feel the director. And the Snyderverse trilogy, you feel the director. And I know you may not love every one of those movies, but at least you can feel the director's unique style style from them. Now, that is so rare to come by. Most recent superhero films feel soulless. They're just studio controlled with terrible writing. Poor dialogue and generic overused humor are plaguing recent films. And because these studios are rushing these films out, the VFX teams are being rushed too, causing CGI to be far weaker than it used to be. And nothing feels real anymore. Films aren't selling the reality of what they are showing. I was watching Transformers Revenge of the Fallen the other day, and that is nowhere near a cinematic masterpiece. But what I love about that movie was how it felt real. Not just through high quality CGI, but also the fact they were always in real locations. None of this overuse or over-reliance of green screen, but physical, real locations. They filmed in the desert, they filmed at an army base, and they filmed in the city. And I felt that through what I was seeing. Now, everything is filmed in a studio and surroundings are filled with green screen. Nothing feels genuine anymore, and it's such a shame. I want to watch a movie and feel fully absorbed into it, not being taken out of it due to bad dialogue or terrible CGI or clear use of green screen. And that blame sometimes has to be put on the directors and writers too. Sure, some executives of film studios are clueless and know nothing about filmmaking, but when the writers and directors are given creative freedom and they still make terrible movies, then I think they are entirely the ones to blame. Which brings me on to the second point. The mindset surrounding superheroes is changing. I think back in the 2000s, filmmakers were doing their best to improve the reputation surrounding superheroes by making more serious films. What was once seen as silly movies only for kids and comic book fans were now being turned into serious movies that had very deep stories. There were movies that had powerful meanings behind them and were taken away from their corny reputation. Sam Raimi started that mindset with Spider-Man, although it was still a bit cheesy, but Christopher Nolan really carried that to another level with the Dark Knight trilogy. They were changing the perception of the genre, and that had inspired future filmmakers to do the same. We had Iron Man, which was a comedic character, but you completely felt the love, care, and seriousness the creatives put into that film. They could have completely turned him into a joke, but they didn't, and that is why the film is so iconic. But then as time has gone on, it feels like this goofiness is returning to the genre. Every movie now has to be silly, and every character has to be stupid in order to be funny. And I think that is the sole reason why the term superhero fatigue has been shared around. I don't think audiences are tired of superhero films in general. I just think they are tired of these generic, boring, and just bad superhero films where every single one is a comedy. And I think that has happened because of the people making them. The studios and creatives behind them seem to either care less about these characters and stories, or think that because the comics were goofy, then the films and shows should be too. Hardly anyone within the filmmaking industry takes these characters seriously anymore. And I don't mean making serious movies, I just mean taking the characters seriously, seeing them for more than just silly stories for kids. Now, it's all about how can I make the audience laugh while spending a ton of money on CGI fights. It's never about how can I add depth and meaning to this character? How can I inspire the next generation? And I think that is the real issue I'm having with these films. As a kid, I watched superhero films because they were the coolest thing to me. Not only did I see justice being served in a really cool way, but I had these characters I could look up to. I idolized them, and as I've grown up, I still look up to those characters, but there seems to be less and less of them around now. It's not about doing the right thing anymore. It's about telling some jokes, using CGI to entertain me, and then back to telling more jokes, and then maybe some cheap inspirational quote or emotional moment towards the end of the film. When you think about the best superhero films of all time, what movies come to mind? I can almost guarantee you that the majority of your answers are movies that were made before 2019 and where the director takes the characters and stories seriously. Again, not necessarily using serious characters, but the directors and writers seeing this genre for more than just cheesy comic book characters. For example, Spider-Man. We've had 3 live-action takes on Spider-Man, and they've all had filmmakers who take the character seriously. You could very easily take Spider-Man and turn him into a joke. A kid who wears a skin-tight red and blue costume with a spider on his chest and calls himself Spider-Man. That's a very mockable opportunity if the creatives wanted to do that. But what all 3 directors managed to do was take this comic book character, throw him into the modern day, and create fantastic characters that have inspired so many people. It all has to do with the mentality of the people making these movies. Now, I'm not saying comic books didn't inspire or these characters weren't deep or emotional, but what I'm saying is that when transferring a story or character from the page to the screen, there seems to be a real divide in how to present them. You have the Dark Knights of the genre, filmmakers who see these stories as an opportunity to treat them with respect and maturity. And then you have the Love and Thunders of the genre, filmmakers who see superheroes as stupid and silly, and so their superhero movies display that mentality throughout. One mindset creates films that I love, and the other mindset creates movies that I hate. And it all has to do with how the creatives perceive superheroes, and the reason why I think I am enjoying these films less now is because one mindset has taken over, and it's causing me to care far less about these new films. When I can feel that the creatives think these characters are stupid, then I will no longer care about them. And that is what has been happening in recent years. Studios are using superheroes to make high-budget comedies and are hiring people who don't care about the genre or think the genre is inherently goofy, and so the movies should reflect that too. For example, and I know I keep on talking about this movie a lot, but the director of Thor Ragnarok and Love and Thunder, Taika Waititi, said he had no interest in making a Thor movie, but did it because he was poor. Now, I completely sympathize with his financial situation, but he had no idea who Thor was and had no interest in making a movie about the God of Thunder. It was only the financial incentive that made him make it. And when we see how Love and Thunder turned out specifically, you can see that lack of respect for the character plain as day. He thought he was a stupid character, so he treated him like one. Now, Thor is seen as a joke by most. And I know a lot of people love his work, and I really appreciate his work on the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, but even James Gunn said that he loves superheroes, but they are also the dumbest thing ever. Even saying he can't take Batman seriously, and the fact that adults take these movies seriously is ridiculous. But if you do read the quote fully, he does say there's a silliness to these characters that he can't deny, like Batman dressing up in a batsuit, which I do get, and he does say it's not him making fun of it, because he thinks the silliness is what is real about it. My only worry with that is if you look at his work in the comic book movie genre, he does present these characters as silly. There are emotional aspects to those movies, but they are treated with the mindset that they are silly characters. And by his own words, he does that because he thinks that is what makes them real. And I get slightly concerned because, as I have been saying, I think it is the mindset of the creatives that have caused the decline in the superhero genre. Absolutely anything in life can be seen as silly if you think about it immaturely. You can say football is silly because it's just 22 men running around a pitch trying to kick a ball in between 2 metal posts. But it's the most popular sport in the world, and if you say that to any football fan, they will look at you like you don't understand the beauty of football. When you break anything down to the immature levels that Gunn has described there, they can become meaningless. It's the added depth and passion that gives that interest so much meaning. So yes, Batman is a funny concept, but the execution of how Batman is portrayed really isn't. The worry I have with the DCU is that his mindset on superheroes will be pushed through those movies. The reason he has made films with smaller characters who are on the outskirts of popularity is so he can make them silly. I don't want to see a DC universe filled with that mentality. I don't think he will, but I think he has has presented that in his past comic book projects, and so have many other directors recently. And I think having that mentality and presenting that through their movies is why superhero fatigue is happening, which is one of the many reasons why my interest in the superhero genre has been declining in recent years. They're all just trying to make you laugh rather than putting effort into making a powerful and inspirational story. I'm not asking for the new superhero films to only be serious or dark movies, and I'm not expecting cinematic masterpieces every time. Just good, well-written comic book movies. Don't let comedy or action take focus over the story. And I'm fine with comedy being in superhero films. I love Guardians of the Galaxy 1, and I really liked Shazam. The issue is that now, most of these films go overboard. They've seen audiences appreciate these funny moments, but I think they've now gone too far. Every single film is now made with that in mind, and every single one does it way too much. I loved Guardians because it was unique. The other films were more grounded and serious takes, and the Guardians made a nice contrast. But then everyone started trying to copy that formula, but they are all far worse at it. Meaning we get knockoff versions of a movie that worked really well, and every movie is trying to replicate that. So we're getting high saturations of comedies, but they're just getting worse with every release, because none of them can do it as well as James Gunn did with Marvel. The saying that really stands out to me is less is more, and I really believe that. We need less comedies for the comedy to work. I've realized I can now predict when a joke will be made and what it will be roughly about before it actually happens, because every movie is now made the same. But when Guardians of the Galaxy came out, most of the humor caught me off guard because of how unique it was. No other superhero film had done it before, but now every movie does it. And it's become so much worse because writers are now more focused on cracking stupid jokes than actually telling a high quality story. So many movies now go through extensive reshoots and rewrites because the writing is a mess and because the people making these movies don't care. If the MCU was making movies with the same care that they used to, then this video would have never been made. And I think that's more of an appropriate request. Maybe not necessarily needing every creative to take it seriously, but just to treat them with care. Act like you actually care about the movie you are making. Treat them with the respect they deserve. It's like since 2019, the superhero genre has just lost all care for what they make. As if Endgame made both studios decide there was no point in putting the same effort into these movies anymore as they reached their peak. As if Endgame was as good as it was going to get and there was no point trying to aim for better. It's actually a loser's mentality that has caused this. Marvel and DC just gave up. They both hit their peak and decided to create whatever project came into their heads and hoped that audiences would just gobble it up like they had done so for the last 20 years, ignoring the very obvious reason for that success, which was that the old creatives cared for these characters. If Iron Man 1 was made today, it would be nowhere near the same quality. The character would be constantly making jokes that hardly develop the character at all. He wouldn't care about putting people in danger when becoming the hero, and it would all be done in front of a green screen, which is exactly what they did to Ironheart in Black Panther 2. Terrible character development, awful CGI and suit design, and a lack of care for civilians. She may have tried to take down the villain, but she was no hero. And that was because the studios are either hiring people who aren't good enough to be making quality stories, or the writers they do hire don't care about putting effort into these films anymore. Whatever reason it is, the quality has massively decreased since 2019. They're just getting lazy. Instead of writing a good story, they write a generic average story and cover over the cracks with terrible humor we've heard over and over again, and a lot of the time, they make the main character stupid in order to be funny. They're all the same, and they're all far worse than the older superhero films. Maybe I'm in the minority here, but the superhero movies I want to see haven't been a priority at all recently. All we've been getting in the past few years are these forgettable, expensive comedic films with superheroes included in them. I want to go back to the times where the directors could handle having 5 minutes without some stupid joke being shoved in there, where the heroes were seen as legendary characters that people looked looked up to. If I am in the minority here, and most people seem to love this new style of superhero films, then I'll shut up and just watch the older movies. But I'm willing to bet that the majority feel a similar way to me. There just seems to be a real imbalance. We get the odd great movie, but the majority are clearly made with a lack of care. Hopefully the rebooted DCU can look at what has been happening and decides to go back to what worked. It's all well and good to hear Gunn say these movies will be focused on the story, but right now they're just words. I need to see the final product before I have full faith in him. I am excited to see what the DCU does, but if it turns out to be following the current path of the MCU and the later DCEU, then I'll check out pretty soon. But I have hope that it won't do that. I think too many movies have flopped for Gunn not to notice the issue, and hopefully the DCU will prove me right with that. As for the MCU, I have no clue what they're doing. I've kind of lost my passion for those movies. I loved the old ones, but the new ones are just so weak that I don't know if they can redeem themselves. So have I grown out of the superhero genre? No, I don't think I have. Have superhero films become far worse in recent years? I definitely think so. And I think that is because there has been a huge mentality shift among the people funding and making these movies. Less effort and care is being put into them, and that is presented in their movies. So if the genre continues down this path, then I think it will slowly but surely die. And the box office decline, I think, is a clear indicator of that. So now you have heard my opinion, I want to know yours. Are you happy with the state of the superhero genre, or do you agree with me? Let me know in the comments below. But that is all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe and turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I hope to see you here again soon, so until then, have a great day. Bye!